You're listening to Welcome to Eloma, a podcast for highly ambitious dreamers who get shit done. I'm your host, Kiley Peters. This is a space where we talk about protecting yourself and your business. So starting a business is hard. Running a business is hard. But one of the biggest things that can throw a wrench in your business is when legal comes knocking on your door, especially unexpectedly. Now, I've only had a few legal encounters myself over the last few years, but let's just say that they take up not only a ton of time to address, but the mental and emotional energy spent on these situations is taxing, to say the least. In addition to the time you spend, you also get the joy of legal fees on top of addressing them. So whenever I'm working with business owners, I always recommend they do not DIY it when it comes to legal, and that they definitely have their legal assets in order, which is why I'm very excited to introduce today's guest. Today, we are chatting with Carolyn Jahnke. She's an attorney with over 20 years of legal and business experience, and she's the founder of Athena Legal Solutions, where they offer legal solutions to businesses and nonprofit leaders at an affordable rate, also rare to find in this space. So welcome to Eloma, Carolyn.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So Carolyn, you've spent the majority of your career on in-house on the corporate side in corporate law. You opened Athena Legal Solutions out over the last couple of years. Tell us a little bit about why you decided to make this leap.
Well, I think it all starts with I'm a mom, right? I have 4 kids who are quickly getting older and time flies. And working in-house was great. I think it's a really unique experience. And my last couple of jobs in-house were helping with startups, which I loved. I loved being in at the ground floor, helping them figure out all the details, the business part, the operations part, not just like, here's the law, you need to do this. Like I liked the collaborative nature of that. But doing that for a company that's, making millions and millions of dollars is not quite as satisfying as, helping people who are taking real risks, right? They are putting their houses, they're mortgaging their houses to fund their business. They're taking from their retirement account so that they can start a business. And as I decided and thought about transitioning out, I was like, I really want to help those people, like people who are taking real risks, because not a lot of people help them. Lawyers are scary. No one wants to talk to lawyers. No one wants to go to a big firm and say, can you help me with my $200 contract that, someone pays me? And I was like, but those are the people who are making the world a different place. So it happened that I started getting people calling me who were like, do you do this? I was like, yeah, actually I do. I can help you with that. And slowly but surely, I was like, maybe I should start a firm. Maybe this is what I should do.
Yeah. And you've been up and running for a couple of years now. What has been your experience as a new business owner yourself over the last few years?
It
was a challenging time. The last couple of years have been a challenge.
It's been unique. I would say it has been harder and easier than I expected. Harder from an emotional standpoint of the ups and downs and the feeling alone, right? When it's just you. To I hired a person within a year of starting my business and then started growing and started doing all these things that I was like, well, that just kind of happened a lot more organically and easier than I thought it would. So I would say harder and easier, but definitely a roller coaster.
Yeah, for sure. I think when I first started a Brainchild, I met somebody at an event and they said, entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster. You just put your hands up and you just embrace the ride. And I'm like, wow, I really hate roller coasters though. But but that's such a good analogy. It's such like the highs are so high and the lows are real low. But it's a ride. It's totally a ride. So I love that. And we are all so much better off for having you starting Athena. You've been an incredible asset to the community at large. So tell me a little bit. So you talk about, you mentioned you wanted to work in this group of people because these are the people taking real risks and changing the world and need protection, right? So let's talk about some of the lowest hanging fruit opportunities that small business owners need to pay attention to when it comes to a legal standpoint. So if we had like a checklist, what would you say are like, and you probably have like 25 of these, but let's go with 5. And if you want to throw in a bonus or so, go for it. But like the 5 lowest hanging fruits that a business owner needs to make sure they have in place to protect them and their business.
Number 1, have an LLC. It's not that hard to form an LLC. Have something that keeps your business assets separate from your personal assets. Like that, and that is number 1. And unfortunately, a lot of people kind of leap over that because they're like, well, I'm just a side, I'm only making a couple $100 or, and they all of a sudden they don't realize that, wow, there's like a lot I'm putting at risk if something were to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, easiest thing to do. Second thing is.
Wait, can I ask a question on that? Sorry to interrupt. So starting an LLC, now for everybody listening, we know that there's multiple different types of legal entities you can start. And I don't mean to open up that can of worms, but can you briefly explain like some of the differences between like an LLC or the other entities that somebody might be interested in opening, or why one might be better than another?
Sure. So the most basic is not really an entity. It's a sole proprietorship, but it's what people think about. So if you don't have an entity, you're a sole proprietor, which means there's nothing separating your business assets from your personal assets. You could have a DBA that you do business under, or you could just be, Carolyn Jahnke, Esquire, sole proprietor. The next option is an LLC, which is a limited liability company. It's the easiest. It has the least amount of governance that's required, like paperwork, which all small business owners hate to do.
Yes.
So that's why I say LLC, because if you're just starting out, it's the easiest and cheapest way to do it. The filing fees are the cheapest. You have the least amount to do. If you want to have a board of directors and you want to have a number of people who help you make decisions, then it can be a corporation. But you can also do that in an LLC if you choose to, but you have to do it in a corporation. And then you're going to be taxed different in a corporation. And when you're just starting out, that adds accounting fees. It adds legal fees, because now there's a lot of corporate governance that annually you're required to do versus in an LLC. There's a thing that a lot of people talk about as being an S Corp. A lot of small business owners talk about being S Corps, which is basically like being a corporation, except it's limiting, particularly if you want to have, if you have investors, like if you're going to go out there and try and get private equity or different people like that, worst possible choice you can make. Whatever short-term tax benefits you would get are going to be destroyed when you have to convert from a S Corp to a C Corp, because you're going to spend that all in accountants and legal fees and dealing with the taxes associated with it. So I often tell people who even might be going down that path, start with an LLC. Start simple. When you have people who are ready to give you millions of dollars, then you can convert if you need to. But until someone's going to pay you millions of dollars, why would you add that much to your legal fees?
Yeah. So don't make it harder than it needs to be.
Right. And so you can be an LLC and taxed as an S Corp if your accountant goes, it would be better for you to be taxed as an S Corp. But you need to be cognizant when you have that conversation with your accountant that they make more money when you become taxed as an S Corp, because it's a separate tax filing. So really push your accountant to say, is it time to do this? Am I going to get enough tax benefit when you weigh in the costs and expenses to make it worthwhile?
That is the first time I've ever heard that one. Thank you. Also making mental notes to myself. Okay, that's great. I'm glad I asked the question. All right. Thank you, Carolyn. Number two,
get bank accounts. I know that doesn't seem like a legal thing, but your LLC means nothing or your entity means nothing if you don't have separate bank accounts. The courts, if you were to get sued, it's called piercing the veil, would go through your entity if you're using your personal bank accounts to do your business banking, because then they see it as just an extension of your personal assets. So get a business bank account and keep your money separate. That's the only way you keep it protected, is by keeping it separate. Number 3 would be get insurance, because
that's a big one.
You can only do so much, right? Legally, you can only protect yourself so much. There will be a time when you will get sued. So that's the first thing you need, is that insurance, because at least it reduces the fear, right? When something goes wrong, you go, well, at least I have insurance. So that's my first step, right?
And I mean, isn't it fair to say like anyone can sue anyone for any reason? Like you don't have to have, like you could look at somebody wrong and they get pissed. Yeah. Like people are crazy.
They are. And the thing is that it still costs you money to deal with the crazy, right? You still would have to go hire a litigator who would go into court to say what you might want to say, which would be, this person's crazy. Why am I dealing with this? But you can't go into court by yourself and do that, because you don't have a lawyer. So it's just, you're better off just having that protection and peace of mind.
And when it comes to insurance, not that you're an insurance broker, but for the business owners listening and they're thinking, oh my gosh, I don't have insurance. Do you have any recommendation in terms of where to look, or trusted resources, or things to not like to avoid, or clauses you want to make sure are included?
I think the big thing is to make sure that you're insured appropriately, but not overinsured, because an insurance agent might try to sell you all these different types of policies, with protection around data and cybersecurity. But if you don't collect any data about anybody that you actually need to protect or do anything, like, why would you need that? I always start with general liability. Like, just go with general liability.
General liability. Okay.
And then like some sort of errors and omissions. Like if you make an honest mistake, there's coverage to protect you because you made an honest mistake. Those are the 2 that I would start with. I would also say a lot of things I see with tech startups is they have clients who require certain insurance amounts. They say, I won't do business with you unless you have X, Y, and Z insurance. You need someone to help you push back on that, because there is a certain amount of, I'm a startup, it's not appropriate for me to have a $50 million insurance policy. Like if you're that worried about working with me, right, then you probably shouldn't be working with me. But there's a reason. I'm cheaper. That's why you're working with me. So you're going to take a chance if we're going to take a chance. And so really don't feel over the barrel on those things. Talk to an expert who can help you think about how to push back or negotiate for different ways. Like once we reach this level in our relationship, then I'll make sure I have this much insurance.
Sure.
Things like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. I'm literally taking notes. Thank you. All right. What number are we on here?
That was
L.L.C,
3.
bank account, insurance. Okay, great.
Number 4. Number 4, contracts. Have contracts with your clients. And it doesn't have to be complicated, right? It could be a 1-page contract. But the thing I always tell people is relationships always work better when everybody knows exactly what their job is in the relationship. I mean, think about it. Your personal, with your kids, with your spouse. It's your job to take out the garbage. And in return, I am going to put the bag back in, right? But you will always take it out to the curb for me and I won't have to do that.
Yep.
You get rid of a lot of resentment and avoid that if you have had that transparent conversation. And that's always better in writing, because people forget. So I tell people, don't think of it as you being like a hard business person. It's you having the best intent to have a good relationship. And so someone who doesn't want to sign a contract doesn't really care about having a good relationship with you. Like their concerns make you question, are they going to be a good partner in this relationship?
Yeah. And it's probably fair to say that for the people working for you as well, right? Like I know we talk about 1099s versus employees, but I so often have run into people who are like, well, she's my friend. It'll be fine. And it's like, ooh, don't risk
And
that one.
here's where that goes wrong. Because to a certain extent, fine, they're your friend. They're not going to get upset if you don't pay. And if they don't do the work, you're just going to go. But what if your friend drew the pictures for your book and you didn't have a contract with them and your book goes gangbusters? They own all the rights to those photos because you don't have a contract with them, because they were the artist. They created them. You're out of luck. Like, unless they're willing to, and your relationship has gone to heck, right? So what are you, unless they're willing to assign it over to you, they literally will be tied to you in that money for the rest of their lives. And be ugly. So if anything, you want to make sure that the rights that need to be conveyed in a contract of who owns what, that happens.
Yeah, that's a good way to like go straight for the jugular on that one. That was such a solid example. Yes, absolutely. All right, contracts. Absolutely.
Contracts. So, and absolutely, you were right about contracts with the people that you work with. 1099s and contractors and versus employees. If you don't have the right contracts, you could owe tons of back taxes. This has happened a lot in the post-pandemic era. A lot of states had to give out a lot of unemployment money.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't like that. So they started digging into people who requested unemployment, which happened to be a lot of independent contractors who were like thinking like, oh, well, I can't work anymore. I'm going to file for unemployment. Well, then that led to audits of companies. And they're like, well, no, it was an independent contractor, but they didn't have a contract that said they were an independent contractor. They made them turn in their timesheets in the exact same way that all their employees did it. They had to, anything they had said you had to follow employee policies and things like that. Well, guess what? They're employees now. And now you owe back taxes for all the years that you've been paying them.
Oh,
yeah. So absolutely have to be very careful that you treat those groups of people very differently and are very clear in writing what kind of relationship you have.
Yeah, for sure. I know that's always a line that everybody talks about is the contractor versus employee line. And it's definitely not one to be taken lightly.
No, and that's the thing that like a lawyer is great for, right? Just call them up and ask them the question. They're not going to charge you a bunch of money to like just ask, what's the difference? How do I know? What do I need to think about? What do I need to do? Like we offer almost all lawyers offer like a free consultation or at least of some sort, and they'll be happy to answer that question.
Yeah, for sure. And it's a better use of your time down the line anyway, so that you're not spending time and like fighting these things that could have been easily prevented.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes when we've had to fix these scenarios for people, we've actually had to close down their LLCs, open a brand new LLC, and then rehire everybody under the appropriate contracts so that they would have to set up a whole new employment with the state and a whole UI, unemployment insurance. But that was the only way they were ever going to get back to that independent contractor status that they really intended to have for their business.
Woof. Yeah. So lesson is ask an attorney up front. Don't DIY it and don't assume that you know things.
Yeah.
I'm all for DIYing, but whenever people talk to me about DIY when it comes to attorneys and legal, I'm like, ooh, no, that's not where you're trying to save the cash.
And the funny thing is like super risk averse people will be like, well, I'll just make them an employee. And I'll have a conversation with them and say, except that's a lot of extra expense for somebody who's going to work for you 4 hours a week and you don't care what they do with the rest of their time.
Yeah, so, then you have unemployment and
all the taxes, withholding, right? So sometimes people overcompensate because they'd rather do that, like to be safe versus, ask the question, but they're still, again, wasting money that they didn't need to.
And as small business owners, that's not typically something that we prioritize is wasting of the monies.
No,
Not usually.
there's enough lessons learning in business that you don't need to just frivolously waste it.
Yeah, we're just gonna lose $100,000 over here and 100 over there.
Right.
Okay. All right. Number
Last
5.
one.
Last one.
Protect what makes you great.
Ooh.
Everybody has their business. I mean, if you're in business, there's something that you do different, right? I'm different from every lawyer. You're different from every coach. There's something about you that's unique. And whether that's the content you create, whether it's the branding you put around it, whether it's, just the process that you use for what you do with things, protect it. People do a lot of lead magnets. Entrepreneurs do a lot of lead magnets. Like, oh, download this and you can learn about how I do X, Y, and Z. Except they never put on there a copyright notice that says, do not distribute. Or they create all this content that they let people log into, a member only access, but they have no terms and conditions that say, can't share your password. You have to let us know if somebody accesses your account. The content in there, again, doesn't have a copyright notice. Doesn't mean you have to file a formal copyright, but you're at least telling people, do not distribute this to non-paying people. I mean, there's a more elegant, legal way to do it. But I mean, I lean towards most people are good. If you put something on it that says, do not share this document with other people, they're probably not going to share it with other people because they're going to look at that and go, someone's going to find out I shared it. So for the bulk of the people, you're going to just ward off inadvertent bad behavior versus, the people who are going to be bad because they're just bad people, you're going to stop them anyways.
No. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that makes a lot of sense too. So I like and even from a low hanging fruit standpoint, the copyright what makes you different, what makes you great. And then obviously if you take that one step further, you've got the trademarks and all those kinds of things, which are a whole nother situation. But I like having even just that initial low hanging fruit.
Yeah. And that's what a contract does too, right? Whether it's your website terms of service, whether it's the contract with your clients, the contracts with your employees, all of that is about protecting what makes you great. Yeah.
And again, I love your point too, because so many people feel icky about contracts. And I love how you illustrated, like, you're just making it clear for both sides. Like, this is what I'm saying and this is what you're saying. Are we in agreement? I've seen contracts that are very much one-sided, and there are those. But generally speaking, you're trying to create a mutually beneficial contract. So, okay. Love those. Thank you, Carolyn. All right. We might have already touched on some of this, but what would you say are some of the most common misperceptions about legal and small business?
I think that I'm too small for people to worry about.
Okay.
A lot of times I haven't gotten in trouble yet. I hear, I know I should, but there's
these all sound like naughty kids. We all sound like naughty children.
Well, and it's funny.
Don't tell mom.
This is a safe space, right? I'm not going to laugh at you when you tell me I've just been writing on napkins what someone has to pay me, and that's what I give them. And, it is what it is. The point is that you want to fix it and do it right and reduce your risk going forward. So I think that's a big piece that people are like, I'm too small for it to matter. And when I've had conversations with people, they're like, well, I'm only making like $1,000 a month on that. Like, that's not small. Like, that's decent money. Like, we're talking, you probably have to file some 1099s if you're paying out people for this, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think they realize how quickly small becomes much bigger than small. And so they don't think about it.
Yeah. And it easily snowballs. That's a good point. Like, that's all of our goals, right? Is to continue to grow and grow and grow. But you're inundated with so many things that it's easy to forget if you haven't put those protections in place from the get-go.
Yeah. I had a lady who has been in business for 5 years, a very successful business. And she goes, I just want you to look at my contract. Like, I think there's a few things that are missing. It's worked well, but some things have been arising. And so like, I've never had a lawyer look at it. Let's look at it. And so we're talking and I go, okay, so what's your LLC name? She goes, I didn't form one yet. I was like, this is the year. We're going to do that this year because that's the first thing you do
tomorrow. Let's go.
Before I make your contract right, you need to have an LLC. Like, the money you're going to spend on a contract is way more than what you're going to spend on forming your LLC. So like, let's just get this done.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Again, you just get going. It's like, it gets pushed down to that to-do list, down to the bottom. And then sometimes it just falls off.
And it falls off because people are intimidated. Right?
Well, and legal is scary.
Super scary.
To the average person, legal is very scary.
I don't like talking to lawyers. They're scary people, right?
You're a lawyer. I love it.
But but a lot of them are because they think up here and they talk up here and they're like dissecting laws and stuff. And so I get it. I get the rap that our industry has gotten. But that was part of the point of me doing what I'm doing, right? Is that not all of us are scary and not all of us are just out here to, take every minute that we can bill you for. So
those minutes add up, man.
Yes. As least intimidating as possible. I actually had a client. I was like, I can wear my hoodie if it will make you feel better.
There you go. I know. For a long time, I was like, I should always wear blazers so people take me seriously because people always tell me I look really young. And I'm like, you know what? But I just love hoodies. I really love hoodies. And it's like this element of approachability. Like if a hoodie had a tagline, it would be like, I'm approachable. Like I'm just an average person. We all love our hoodies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, tangent aside. Carolyn, as we wrap up here, what is the one thing that you want people to take away from this episode when we were talking about protecting yourself and protecting your business?
I think it's that it's okay to take risk in your business, right? It's okay to not have a contract. It's okay to not do all those things, but do it in an educated manner. Understand the risk that you're taking. Have a conversation. Take the time to educate yourself. So at least then you're taking knowing risk versus unknown risk, because unknown risk can bite you in horrible ways versus at least you knew these are the bad outcomes that could have happened and you've chosen to take that risk. Then that's a knowing on you decision. So call a lawyer, call around. If you don't like the first lawyer you talk to, call around, ask your friends, just call and have a conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Love it. Call and have a conversation. I want to take a second and talk about Athena Legal Solutions. You guys have some big goals this year. So tell me a little bit about what you are looking forward to and what you're working on in 2023.
Well, do you pick a word for the year, Carly?
I try, but I have so many words. I'm really bad at that, but I really respect the people who can nail it down. So it sounds like you've got a word.
Well, I don't have a word. I have a phrase. So it's, this is the year to go big. We're going big in 2023. So I'm going to think big, I'm going to act big, and I'm going to, be big, and how I do things. So one of the big things we want to do is we've added estate planning, which is a new thing. And I'm also looking to hire a number of lawyers. So we just are physically going to get bigger. But the other really big thing is that I want to have 223 women start businesses in 2023. And I love that. To facilitate that, we've reduced our rates significantly for starting an LLC package in an effort to make it as accessible as possible. Because I just think women business owners are so amazing and they bring something so different to the world that we need more of us. We need more of us out there because we do great things.
Yes, we do. I've been saying, I believe when women, so I think entrepreneurship is one of, not the only way to find financial freedom and build a fulfilling life. But for the women who choose that path, I just feel like it's one of the best ways to make the money that you want potentially. And when women have the money that they need in their lives, they make better decisions for themselves and for their families. And I think for the world, because we make big choices and we give back in a lot of ways. So
one of my favorite statistics is small businesses. 90% of them give back to their community. That's the power of small business.
It's huge.
Right? They're supporting schools. They're supporting recreation programs. They're supporting the food pantry and the Girl Scouts. All of that is so critical. It takes a village. Anybody who has kids knows it takes a village. And so just the more women we can help be part of that community. And I feel so, I don't know if it's feel bad, but there are women I talk to who are like, well, I want to do this, but I don't know. The people around me, they're not really supportive. Should I be doing this? Am I wasting my money? And just being that cheerleader to say, you're not crazy. You know what you're talking about. I'm listening to you. I'm impressed. You have a plan. You know what you're going to do. And you want to take a chance. It's your money. Why not?
Yeah.
Making that as easy a leap as possible and being that cheerleader for them is, I think, really important and exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, and it is so challenging for all the reasons that we've talked about and all those that we haven't yet mentioned. One thing that has killed me recently is I've been having a lot of conversations with women who want to start their businesses and they've had very unsupportive partners. And the feminist in me is just rages. But so to anybody listening, if you are thinking of starting your business and you may not have a super supportive partner, reach out to me and Carolyn because we would love to help you. And we believe in you, even though we haven't even met yet.
Right. Absolutely. And there's a whole network of people who are there to help you. The minute you are vulnerable enough to say, this is what I want to do, there will be 50 women going, let me introduce you to this person. I know this person. Let's introduce you. Hey, did you know you can get funding from this place? It's out there and we're happy to share it. You just have to be vulnerable enough to say, this is my dream. Will you help me?
Which is scary. And I'm glad you say vulnerable enough because it's true. It is, I was, not to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but I was looking at the relationship between vulnerability and entrepreneurship. And you truly cannot be an entrepreneur if you're not willing to be vulnerable, literally all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I don't remember the definition off the top of my head, but it's the act of putting yourself out there, understanding that there's a chance you're going to get hurt in the process.
Yes. Well, that's
entrepreneurship all day long.
Every day. And that's part of my think big, right? Me saying this, even saying, we're going to get 223 women to start businesses. That's scary. That's a lot of businesses.
It is.
The only way I'm going to do that is have conversations with people like you and, the rest of the world and saying, hey, you want help? I'm here.
Yes. I love it. And we already talked about this, but we are here to support you in that mission because I totally back it. I think that's amazing. Okay, so that might lead into this next question, or this might be a totally different thing. But here you go, Carolyn. What impact do you want to make on the world, or what legacy do you want to leave?
I think about this a lot. I've thought about this a lot in my life because of how my parents were growing up. And I have a sister with disabilities. And so I was raised with the idea that she will be my responsibility someday. And I have to figure that out into my life plan. And I just feel you have such a responsibility to make everybody around you better in whatever way that is, right? Whatever small ways, if it's being a Girl Scout leader, if it's, serving on a board, if it's just connecting people or just, doing the meal train for somebody, in the school who's, kid is sick. That's what I want to be remembered for, is that I made a difference, that I gave and I helped, make things better for other people. I gave them opportunities.
I love that. Okay. My last question for you. This is a humdinger. Fair warning.
All right.
Well, hopefully. All right. What is your greatest insight or discovery about life and entrepreneurship?
Oh, that the community is really different from what you would have expected. When you grow up in the corporate world, there are only so many seats at the table. Like literally, there are only so many seats. And so everybody's always fighting for those seats because, John Smith has been in that role for 30 years, right? And so when he retires, everybody's clamoring for that one spot. And so it's a real like dog eat dog, every person for themselves kind of situation. And that is not what entrepreneurship is. Like when you make the switch and the jump, you realize what a community is and how there's enough room for everybody at the table and everybody can do their thing and enjoy it and be happy with it. And we can actually help each other be better and say, I tried that tool. It really was a waste of time and money. I wouldn't put your energy into it. And we want to, because we don't want to see people go through the stress and pain and money loss that we did. That is not how it works in the corporate world.
Yeah. And I like that too, because as we talk about like entrepreneurship in life, like there are enough seats at the table and it looks different than what you might think. So this idea of having an open mindset, I love it.
Yeah. I was interviewing a candidate today and she brought up, because I have my Women Power Partners directory where, it's women who support other women entrepreneurs. And there's another attorney in there. She's like, so what's the deal with the other attorney? I go, well, I guess you'd say we're competitors. We do the same thing, but, she does her thing differently than I do. And, I'm happy to support her. She applied to be part of it and I'm happy to support her. And she supports me. So I don't think it's weird. I'm happy to refer.
And I think that's so amazing because, again, that mindset so often, especially as women, we have been trained to have this scarcity mindset, exactly like your corporate table example you just gave. Everybody's always been fighting for that same seat, but in entrepreneurship, we're all creating our own seats. And so there's enough seats for people just like us to sit next to us. We don't have to play Ring Around the Rosie and see who's going to get the chair.
Right.
I don't think those are the same games. Ring Around the Anyway. Thank you. Musical chairs, not Ring Around the Rosie. Okay, here we go. But yes, I love that. And I think it's a mindset shift that I encourage everybody to continue to adopt because we can grow so much farther and faster together. Than if we're just fighting each other all the time.
It's hard though. I mean, it's not easy when you spend 10, 15 years doing something one way. It's a very unique switch. So, I mean, it's something you have to work at, but I think that's also what you're talking about with the entrepreneurial mindset. Like you have to be mentally tough to do the roller coaster. And so it's important. For
sure. And I will say I've been guilty of this too, of the competitor mindset. For anybody listening, just be aware of it. When it pops up, just be like, okay, that's not necessarily true. We could be partners. We could be allies. It's not necessarily a me versus them kind of thing. And it really can change the landscape of everything.
Absolutely. And I think it's why being in masterminds and other groups like that with other business owners is so powerful because even if you don't do the same things, there's so much learnings you can take and just having a fresh perspective. Because when you're by yourself, other than talking to yourself, there's not a lot of new voices that you get to hear. And you might go a little crazy talking to yourself. So having,
that's okay. Groups. No judgment for the talking to yourself.
That's what my whiteboard's for.
Right? That you should see when I go on walks, I'm like listening to books or I'll verbally dictate and I just am focused on enunciation. I'm like, here are new blog post ideas. Talking, I literally am talking out loud to myself and people walk by and they're like, who's this crazy person? It's okay. No judgment. Okay.
When I do mine and I'm listening to podcasts, I take notes. So I'm I'm the one who's out there walking, trying to type notes into my phone.
Yeah, for sure. Anyway, Anywho, Carolyn, thank you so much for being a guest on our show today. For anybody listening who is like, I need to talk to Carolyn, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Go to our website. It's www.athenalegalsolutionsllc.com, the world's longest website that someday
that's a doozy.
Yeah. But on there's a little Let's Talk button in the top right corner. So you can click on that and you can schedule time and free time, and we can just have a conversation, and you can access a ton of information on our website. There's all of our flat rates and information on what we do. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for all of your nuggets and words of wisdom. For anybody listening who's enjoyed this episode just as much as I have, please go ahead and leave a review wherever you are listening. And Carolyn, thank you again.
Thank you.
To continue learning how to better build your business and make your vision a reality, subscribe to the Welcome to Eloma email list at welcometoeloma.com.